All right, welcome back. This is Board Game Closet. What are we doing? Dungeons and Dragons Forum, right?
Dungeons and Dragons Forum. Welcome to Extra Life Tabletop Appreciation Weekend. We've raised $435.
Woo!
Big money.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone, so far. It's
Fantastic.
Wonderful. So we've been playing games all day. We're tired of it. We're sick of it. Let's talk about something else for a little while.
Okay, that's okay. What are we going to talk about?
We're talking about D&D. D&D, and we had some questions sent in to us. We come up with some of our own for those of you that are beginners or looking to get into it or just want to know more about it. If you have some questions that you think of while we're talking, comment them in on the stream, and we'll keep an eye on it and try to answer them when we see them. So first things first, Rod, what is D&D? What is Dungeons and Dragons?
So Dungeons and Dragons is what? An RPG game, which is a role-playing game. So what is a role-playing game?
Yep.
So it is a game that you have a facilitator. That facilitator is putting scenarios out in front of you, and you're reacting to those scenarios. And how you do with those reactions and things that are maybe you're being attacked or that type of thing is usually done with dice to figure out if you're successful or not successful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very short version, but you have somebody basically that has a story, and we as players are going through that world and trying to interact with it and do some type of quest or that type of thing. To me, it's probably the best game out there. I enjoy it as much as anything else.
Yeah. So what is the minimum that you need to get started? Whether it be player level, DM level, what would be the requirements that you would say we need?
The basic level?
The basic level.
Like if we knew nothing.
Ground floor.
What should I do?
What should I do?
So if you're going to be a DM, then you're going to need a Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yes.
Player's Handbook, Monster Manual.
Mm-hmm. So
those are the three specific things. You probably could get away with not having the Monster Manual for a little while. You could go with like a beginner's box, this type of thing right here.
That would under this camera, maybe.
That would give you pretty much everything you need to do with probably some low-level characters.
Yes. Yep.
The advantage of something like that is that the character's already pre-made for you.
Yep.
Because for somebody going and starting Dungeons & Dragons for the first time, one of the hardest things is how do I get started, right?
Yes. There are two different, right now that's out, there's two different kits. There's a starter set, which is what this is, and then there's also an essentials kit. In my opinion, the starter set is best for beginners because this set actually comes with, and if we can go to either other camera.
Let's go to that one.
It comes with a actual module that has all the players already printed out that you need, 5 level 1 class characters, and a kind of abridged starter set. That's okay. A bridge starter handbook. Like Rod had mentioned, the rules are contained in a what's called the player's handbook. This is a super shortened and condensed version of that. So if you're saying, I've heard of D&D, I want to jump into it, what is step one? What is the quickest way that I could literally just jump in? This box comes with a campaign that will take your players from level 1 to level 5. Dice. It comes with just one set of dice. It comes with these pre-generated characters. Like, for instance, here's a level 1 fighter who's got the background already done, all the stats laid out. And so all you would need to know then is how to read this. And of course, the book would explain how to do that and everything. You can buy this box on Amazon, Target, Walmart, several different places ranging from $30 to $40. So if just literally getting started, you could do it for $50.
Right.
No problem.
Easy. And some friends.
The player count is honestly 2 is the minimum. You need a DM, the dungeon master to get started, to read the book to you, to tell you what's happening, and a player to experience it.
Right.
And in my experience, the perfect player count is 3 to 4 players and 1 DM. Any less than that, it's kind of tough. It's kind of chaotic.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah. Any more than that's the same. Everybody wants something to do. Everybody's got something to say. What would be, so Jordan, where the city that we're in right now, if you said, I want to play D&D, how could you do it? How could I
do it?
go play D&D?
Well, like I don't have anything.
You don't have anything, but you want to play. Is there places that you can go where you can find a game?
That I can find a game itself.
Yep.
Probably a college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think if I really wanted to play a game, I could just go to a study room and find a group probably playing.
That's a good thing. We've got a couple of local game stores that have actual adventure league, is I think what they call it.
Yeah.
Like every one day a week, you can just come in and there's several groups that are playing. Now in the year 2020, you can play online.
Yeah.
Play on the internet through Roll20. If you have friends on Discord,
you can Discord.
Fantasy Grounds.
Yeah. Roll20 I've used before, and it's really not user friendly. But if you can figure it out, you can then upload maps, and then your other players can move their figures around. You can what's called the fog. You can blacken parts of the map that you only want your players to get into, and then open it up as they explore. Because that's the whole point of it, is to go in and experience these things and find good loot and level up and get upgraded or whatever. Rod, what was your first character?
Fighter.
A fighter.
Yeah. And in the old days, I mean, this is first edition when I did
the old days.
You very old days. The fighter couldn't do anything, but I mean, that's all he did was fight. Now with the 5th edition, you've got fighters that do cast spells and things like that. So some of them are as difficult to play as just a regular fighter was. When I first played doing a fighter, all you're doing was just trying to bash and defend. That's all you're doing.
That's all you're doing. So, as going back to getting started, that's another thing. Like dudes on a map, how complicated does it have to be? I've got some miniatures right here. Well, this is probably like $20 worth of miniatures just sitting right here, just 4 of them. And that's expensive. That's a lot of money. Yeah. And so I've got a friend that he uses pennies. Like he uses pennies and nickels and quarters and I mean anything. You just need something to stand in. A die to represent that. As far as the map goes, I've got this dry erase, wet erase board that you can draw on. You can buy dungeon tiles, they're called, to put it together. So getting started is honestly sky's the limit, but also you can do it for nothing.
You just need imagination.
Imagination.
And then to be able to really go after it. I got a question.
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's now a little more on the advanced side. Maybe not advanced. Maybe I just want to know. I'm going to go to each of us. I'll have my own, but I want to know, as the DM, because you're usually DM, what is the most annoying thing a player can do?
Not paying attention.
Just not paying attention.
So we joke around in our game. I have favorite players, and they know it. Okay, because you know why? They're paying attention 100% of the time. They are very interested. They're taking notes, that type of stuff. Yeah. That tells me they're all into their character. That's who I want playing my game. Yeah. So there are times in which I have stopped playing for a while, at least running a game, because the fact is the characters, and it's probably my fault, but the characters weren't as much as I want them to be. If they're not into it, we're kind of wasting each other's time in a way, But when a character's really into it and they're all excited about it, and we're rolling and people are cheering, that's a blast.
So I think there's a middle ground in that. I think it is, right? Because D&D, I feel like it is fun taking it super serious sometimes, but every now and then it's fun to just have your character at the bar and just do something dumb.
No, that's true too. But what I'm talking about is on when we're playing and then I get to the person, it's like
just on their phone,
and they're not paying attention.
Yeah,
they're not ready.
Yeah,
because everyone has initiative, and initiative is how turn order.
Yeah,
and when they're not ready, that's just a little disappointing.
Yeah, well, if they're not into it, if they're not really going into it. Now, Bradley.
Yeah.
How often have you been the player?
Probably an equal amount of time.
Equal amount of time. Yeah. So which one would you rather? Would you rather, what's the most annoying thing a DM's done, or most annoying thing that or both? You can answer both those.
So maybe for me, this is related.
All right.
As the DM, I want you to be involved enough that if I make a bad call, you can call me out on it. Like if you feel like I should be, so for instance, I say, Rod, it's your turn. What would you like to do? I want to bust the door down, or something like that. Me as the DM, I should be able to say, okay, you do this because of that, or you can't bust the door down because of this. If there is an actual rule in the book that goes against what I've said, the player has a right to call me out on that. However, it's still the DM's game.
Yeah, he's number one. It's his world.
It's his world. And sometimes in D&D, you don't go off a book. You can play. The rules are such that you can create your own world and the rules just apply to it. So in saying that, if I've spent weeks and hours on creating this game and you want to disrupt everything I've got going because you feel like you have right to knock a door down or something like that, there's lines. There's lines that you can cross to where you become this alpha edgelord is what we call them in my group, where I want to do the cool thing. I got to do the superhero level cool thing. And the DM knows what's coming. And maybe he's setting up something for the party to do. And you just keep pushing your own agenda. And that's difficult. That's difficult to deal with. So that can go either way. And I know for beginners out there, you're probably getting lost at this point. So if I can, maybe let's transition into this way. You're sitting at the table, you have your player sheet out, and the DM, Rod, says, okay, Bradley, it's your turn. What are some of the questions that I, as a new player, should be asking? So maybe this is for you, Jordan.
So, there's a million.
There's a million
you should be asking. And I got something for that. It kind of goes on the same same thing we're saying, kind of like what kind of gets you mad about the DM or the player, because that's what butts heads usually is the DM and the players. I think my biggest thing kind of goes along with this is the whole point of role-playing game, I think, is not to be a linear thing, right? I feel like it's kind of hard to, as a DM, to have a story that's big and stuff, but it kind of gets to a point that if I don't want to do this, that shouldn't be the end of the game. Thing. It shouldn't be I have to do all this, because at that point it's the DM's just made the game, right?
Right.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? Like there shouldn't be I can't go through this door like I physically can't, so I can't force it. But like if I want to just
try it,
why not?
Why not?
Why not let us try to go through here? Or if a monster comes and maybe we want to sneak around it. Yeah. Maybe it's not a big fight. Maybe I think that's kind of that's where where D&D is where you can kind of do whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're just joining us, we're doing an Extra Life tabletop appreciation, raising money for the Children's Miracle Network of hospitals. So far, we've raised so much, and we appreciate you all. But in this segment, we're doing a D&D forum question and response. The question is, as a player, Rod, if I say it's your turn, are there questions in your mind that you're trying to what determines what you're going to do? Do you have kind of a few questions that you go through in your head that'll determine what your next move is?
Well, so that's where the Dungeon Master comes into play, obviously, is that they should have given you a good outline of where they're at. So in other words, the person you're in the bar, there's been some table flipping going on. The guys are starting to fight. Yeah, you're in the corner. You can see there's two guys coming out. He's starting to charge you. Now, what are you going to do? And then from there, then it's just the who, what's, and where's. Normally, as a fighter, you're like, charge back, whatever. As a magician or whatever, you might cast a spell or something. But it's up to the Dungeon Master really has to paint the scene for you. And if they're not, and I've often not, personally, then it's up to the player to say, okay, well, tell me what's happening here. I need to know more. I need more information.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that. Like what the hinges in the game is the who, what, why, where, and how. If I'm standing in a room, what's in the room? Why am I in the room? How am I going to get out? How am I going to get in? It's this whole conversation that the player and the DM has trying to get to the end goal.
Right.
Whether that be, let's get to the big bad, let's help this old lady find her cow, let's
go get the crazy sword that we've all been
Yes.
hunting for.
Yes, let's find the big loot. So again, just to kind of recap, you can get into D&D for little or nothing. There's a lot of online sources. Like D&D Beyond is probably the biggest because they have all the resources there. You still have to buy them, to access them fully. But you can create a free account on D&D that has player sheets ready for you to go, that you can go through and answer all these questions, like what race, what class, what level. Do I roll dice? Do I do a points by type system? That's where your, how strong I am, how perceptive am I? That's where that all kind of comes in. And then as you play the game, which could be, you could sit there for an hour. You could sit there for 3 hours. You could play for most of our games. I have like barely two groups, and we try to play like once a month if we can.
Yeah.
And so we may play for 6 hours or something like that, just to get enough in. And constantly you're asking, if you roll a dice, what do I add to it? And what does that mean? Did I fail? Did I succeed?
Yeah.
And that's just essentially what we're talking about when you say D&D, is players being led through a world, being led through a story.
Yeah.
And these are the rules. D&D is the rules that you have to play by.
So, yeah. I got a question for Rod.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it kind of goes off of our last thing. So we kind of talked about what kind of makes us mad. As the DM, and as an experienced DM who's experienced a lot of children who don't always take it seriously, what do you do to keep them engaged? To, like, if one player's messing around too much, what do you do to pull them back in or to kick them out? What is your
or kick them out?
What's your process?
So it depends. Like, for instance, some people just don't want to play. Let's be honest about that. Sometimes people are just you just got to kind of weed them out of the game. However you want that to be, but to keep a person's interest, you got to give them some type of goals, and goals personal to their character. So I'll kind of work off something that you were saying there. So when I played, mainly when I played, my oldest character is a paladin, and that character in the guy's game I was playing, we played a lot. We played like through my high school years. We were on it, probably 3 nights a week, and we were on it forever. Hours and hours and hours were spent. Well, he concentrated on my character the most, primarily because I did what I wanted to do, but kept it in line of what his storyline was. So that's kind of up to the player also, not to all of a sudden go left when it's going to change the whole storyline. Feed off what he's doing and then go with it.
Yeah.
And you both will have a better time at that.
Yeah.
If you have a character who's always trying to shoot left or right, you're not going to want to play him. I wouldn't want him in my game if he kept doing that all the time. Sometimes it's fine, but going too often it's not. But keeping the character relevant. So in other words, to save Jordan, you have a paladin, make sure there's some type of sword or plate armor or something. Somebody's going after that he wants. That's going to keep intriguing him, keep making them work toward that goal.
So basically, you want to, this isn't like a normal board game. Normal board game, if I have Bradley over here who's acting mean, being a bully the whole time, I just got to deal with him for the next 30 minutes, right?
Right.
With a game like this, you got to make sure that the DM and the players are all going to kind of be on the same page.
Yeah.
You got to be on the same page from the get-go, and you need to make sure it's not people that are going to be at each other's throats. Yeah. Unless you want that. Unless you want to fight every night. And maybe that's what's going on.
Maybe so.
Right.
Do we have some questions?
It was actually the one I just did. Yeah.
Thank you for looking at that. So again, a starter set is for me the perfect way to get started. $30-$40, and you're in.
Bradley's selling you guys this right here.
I'm telling you,
he wants you to get the starter set right there.
You can go on Amazon and get the 3 books for about $100.
Yeah, right.
So that's just something to keep in mind, because you will. So I've had both. I have both those. I always get the new starter sets that come out because they always have neat stories in them and stuff. But you're going to need the books. I mean, I can almost guarantee if you buy the starter set, you spend $40 on a starter set. I'm guessing you're at least pretty much intrigued with the world. So I would say that the books are going to be coming, and 80% chance you're going to have to go out there and buy those books.
And they're always coming out with new modules. They're always coming out with new books. And this starter set is just the beginning. They all tie in. They're all in the same world. And so as long as you're ready to create a new character or move on with the next one, you've always got something that you can go into. You don't have to come up with every single campaign that your players jump into. You can go out, pull the book off the shelf, and just dive in, do a little bit of prep work before as far as backstory, what's going on as far as politically, dramatically. And then once you're ready, your players can just take off and go. So yeah, this game is a great one. I've been hooked for the past few years. Rod's been playing nearly your whole life.
Yeah.
So it's just it just continues on through the years to be this great thing.
Never gets old.
Never gets old.
Here's a question more on more like just something that's happened is, what is your favorite thing, like story, like little moment that has happened while playing Dungeons and Dragons? Like, what's your number one favorite iconic moment that's happened with you?
Well, recently, my eldest son, his character was a bard, and they were the main character that they were fighting against. They had like this small crystal ball in which they could actually see him. Well, they had captured the son of this person and accidentally got him killed. And then they were speaking to each other, and then my son, basically the character, raised it up so he could see the dead body of his son, and it was just kind of a dramatic moment. It was like at the perfect time. They didn't mean to kill the guy. He got killed actually by the monster that they were fighting against, but made it look like, and this guy is after him and everything. Then he smashed the crystal ball, right there where the body was. And so the last thing that this bad guy sees is his son dead. And it was kind of a neat moment.
Yeah.
It was really it built up from all these things in the background up to this great dramatic moment. It was pretty awesome.
What about you, Bradley?
So the one that comes up to mind actually happened recently. And when friends of mine wanted to start a campaign that's actually in the world, a module, and I thought, I'm a smart guy, I'm going to make my own race. I wanted to be a goat person.
Oh yeah, of course.
Goat person, like with the curled ram horns and
like a satire.
Yes, kind of like that. And I made it to where I could scale up a straight wall as long as it was not a smooth surface. I could just scale up it. I was my dexterity was super high. I had a great attitude about life. I was into everything. Like he was just a hero in his own eyes. And the plan was to infiltrate this local gang's headquarters, which was in this warehouse. It didn't have any other doors, just the one front door, but it had windows. And so me and another player decided, let's go to the roof. Let's go to the top of the roof and then use rope to kind of grapple and then swing in. And I didn't have a problem with it because I can scale just flat walls. And this guy is just the character in itself. I've just decided he's super arrogant about everything. So he gets to the top, actually helps the other player climb with him, and ties the rope, whatever, secures it, and then goes to jump off the roof. And I think the DM at this point was tired of me getting whatever I want. And so he says, okay, well, you need to make a dexterity check, is what it's called, to see how well your trajectory, can you actually do this?
So he said, I'm going to make sure that
is the worst roll of the night. worst roll of the night. And so the whole scene is, and I made sure that as I'm jumping off, I look at the guy and say, see you on the other side. I said this. And I jump off, roll terribly, and just fall to the ground. That's the only other option. I'm in midair, and I fall to the ground. That alerted all of the gang members in this
man.
warehouse. They all come out. My character ends up going unconscious. He ends up not dying, but going unconscious, beat to a pulp by these little minions that shouldn't have been a problem for me at all. But I had to use up nearly a whole turn just to recover from falling on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, again, the difference between board game and D&D, they're
Anything
just
can happen.
not the same thing. Anything can happen. You make a bad roll in a board game, it stinks. You make a bad roll in D&D, and the character you created could die.
Which you've played for years.
Which you played for years could
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine, fighting this guy and saying, well, I'm just going to dodge him. And you don't.
Yeah. You roll a 1. And then if the DM feels bad, he's like, try again.
Yeah.
And then you roll a 1 again. At that point, DM's like,
that's it. It's out of my hands.
You have to die, bud.
What about you? What's your favorite memory?
So we've played since I could talk with Rod as my DM. I was raised with D&D.
Yeah.
And I have a moment that I argue with my brothers to this day. There's actually several moments like that, but this one is, I probably argued with Jared last week about this. And when I say argued, I was getting heated. There was a town that we show up to, and I remember this girl showed up, and she's like, hey, there's a giant evil dragon up in this cave. You guys should go poison it. Yeah. And I remember from the get-go, I said, yeah, this is fake. There is something wrong with this. I was like, I'm staying here. And I remember talking to my brothers. I was like, we don't need to do this. Yeah. And they're like, let's go check it out. So I was like, I will legit not go. It's like, I'm staying here. I'm not being part of it. Yep. They go, how my father plays games, he makes it so if you're not with the group, then you have to leave the room. You don't get to see what happens.
It's only fair.
So I come back, and my brothers are fighting. They are just mad at each other. And my father, in all his wisdom, tricked my 2 brothers to poison the only giant, great, good dragon. Good dragon. Yeah. The one dragon that was going to help us is now poisoned and in an eternal sleep. And it's because as my 2 brothers got up there, he, I guess there was someone with him or whatever. And he's like, what do you guys do? Do you guys go poison it? And before the smart one, before my brother who actually thinks about things could say anything, the other one said, I want to do it. And then Rod went with it. He's like, all right,
let's go.
You're going to do it then. I don't even know. I don't know if he rolled any checks because I wasn't there for it. I just know I told him no. I come back. Our only good guy against the War of Evil is now down.
It's now down.
And I think he's still down, right?
Yeah, he's still asleep.
And what was that? We did that when I was 8.
Yeah. And
so this great dragon that still has helped us not because we poisoned him when we were little kids. And I remember I was legit I was blaming Jared. Jared wasn't the one who poisoned him, but he was the one there that didn't stop him.
Yeah.
And that's where we argue a lot. Is right there.
So the thing that's interesting, when it comes to role-playing games, there are moments like that live on forever. I mean, it's just almost like a memory of something that really happened. And in board games, I can think of only 1 or 2 that of all the board games. I've played a million board games. I can think of 1 or 2 where moments have actually happened. Spartacus would be one, but that's the difference when it comes to RPG games. Yeah. And then when talking about the money, what it takes to invest to get into it, it's as little as $100 to forever. Yeah. Because it just depends on what you want to do with it, how you want to do it. You can do it on paper. Yeah. You can do it on the computer. You can buy everything, 3D stuff. It's unlimited. This is a money pit also.
Yeah.
All right, so let's actually go to a question from our chat. All right?
Totally.
So Oblivion Sharp says, what's your take on homebrew mechanics like spell castings and spell slots and spell points? What's your take on I guess, what are they allowed to do? Are you by the book?
No.
Are you going to
by my world is what it would be for me.
And so I think
any DM. So normally I think what would happen and what does happen with the games that I've played is you would talk to the DM about, hey, I'd like to maybe try to do this. And what do you think about this? And we homebrew a lot of stuff. So So I think this is just a guideline.
Mhm.
I would never take it as being fully structured. Just like he was saying, it's like if it doesn't work in your world, it doesn't work in your world. So I mean, you want your world to be a certain way, but I think also don't be so tight that you don't allow anything to change from the rules. I think you can run it the way you want, but I like all the homebrew stuff.
Yeah. So one actual example that I have is in our games, if you roll a 20, so on a 20, for those who are listening that don't know anything about it, this is a 20-sided dice, and it determines how well you do something. You add some modifiers to the score, but that determines how well you do it. Well, a 20 is the best outcome that could happen. Well, what happens in such an anticlimactic way, the rules read that if you roll a d20, you can double whatever damage you roll. So if you roll the d20, get a 20, and then your damage dice is a d6, for example, well, you get a 1.
Yeah.
1 doubled is only 2. That's lame.
Right.
Honestly, that's the best way to explain it. It's lame. So a homebrew rule that we do is if you get a natural 20, you actually get a full amount on your damage dice. If the damage dice you roll is a d6, you automatically get a d6, just like that.
Do you times it by 2 still, or just d6?
So you get a full damage there, and then you roll the other one. So you get 2 dice, but the 1 value is added automatically. We've
kind of changed ours over time because what I used to do at one point was I did the 20-sider, and then I'd have them roll the 20 again.
Yeah.
And then if they ended up rolling really high, that scored a second hit. So then they would do that.
I like that.
We've done double damage.
Yeah.
And then if they were rolling another 20, it'd be triple damage. So it just depends on how. Just depends.
Yeah.
That changes as I go on.
Because that's the thing. If you've created this campaign, spend weeks on this campaign, and you have these little things that become anticlimactic. You didn't spend all this time for this moment to be anticlimactic.
Yeah, right.
You made it to have this huge boss fight that looks and feels like a movie, like you're in an action movie or Lord of the Rings or something like that. Natural 20. So little things like that almost has to happen so that it creates, like you said, these memories are so much easier to happen. And so that's just an example of I totally am on board with homebrewing it to make it seem like it's yours. Put your stamp on it. Yeah. And so alternatively, if you roll a natural 1 in our game, 3 natural ones in a row and your weapon breaks. So I don't know, I know we've played before, and depending on the situation, you're in a sewer fighting a giant anaconda python snake. I hit it with my staff. It breaks. Like it's wet. It's in a really tense situation. And to create more drama, I think is a great call on Rod's point that on a natural 1, my staff broke. Yeah. My weapon broke. Yeah. And so in that moment, make the call. Right. Make the call.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times where people are getting mad at the DM for doing stuff like that is because they're getting mad. But I think the anger reaction is sometimes just as good as when you slay the dragon, right? Yeah. Because, like I said, like the dragon thing, whenever that's one of my biggest memories of the game. Yeah. It's not of something good happening.
Not a positive one.
And so I think it is very much up to the DM. And it's your choices, right? What you got to choose on what's happening. Because like with the 20s cider, like maybe Rod doesn't want us to get in through a door. Yeah. And he's like, we'll roll for it. And I think it's probably not going to work for anything except a 20. And I think usually if the 20 hits, then I'll be like, well, yeah, you broke it.
Yeah. And so that's, it's up to the DM to create this enriching environment. And that's something that my friends and I talk about too. You aren't playing to win. The DM is not playing to win. Right. The players are not playing to win. This is only a story. Yeah. We're telling a story. And the moment that you get into that mentality of, well, I got to beat them or I can't let them get away with this or something like that, there's certain levels of that's only toxic. You can't do that in a positive way. Now, if the guy's rolling really good and you need to take him down a notch, okay, sure, yeah, maybe.
Hit him
But-
with lightning.
Hit him with lightning. But the thing is, it's not his fault. He's rolling that good,
Right.
or he's rolling that poorly. So just keep that in mind for the DMs.
Right.
So, and just in case you're starting out here, we're doing this for a charity event. There should be a link in the comments to where you can donate. All the money we're raising today is going straight to the Children's Miracle Network. But right now, we're talking about D&D.
Dungeons and
What
Dragons.
else is there to talk about?
Yeah.
So I don't know what else we had, but I actually wanted to talk about a different RPG because maybe you've tried D&D,
Right.
or maybe you don't have time to get into D&D. There are other RPGs out here. Like, for example, this is called Kids on Bikes, another really reasonable, just like D&D, you can get into it very cheap. This actually comes with a core set of rules. This book's like 25 or 30 bucks on Amazon. If you turn in the back, it has different scenarios that you can play through. But this is another, Kids on Bikes specifically, is another very story-driven game, to where even the GM is what they call it in that. The GM is not even responsible for all of the story. It's actually up to the players to come up with different tropes and different scenarios that might be happening, like what player is in love with who, or what player hates the other one, or the other one is jealous that their parents are still together, or something like that. And so it's not that D&D is your only choice. Even D&D is just probably the most popular one, but it's also one of the more heavier ones, to where you do have to know the rules. You do have to, especially on spellcasters, if you play a wizard or any kind of mage, you have to be on top of a lot of those rules. And so if you just need a break, you just don't want to focus that much on rules, there are plenty of other RPGs that you can create the same level of memories without having to study the night before or have the pressure that same day.
Right. And that's one thing I would talk about is that so every once in a while you just need a break from D&D. In other words,
sure,
the fantasy world, right? You like to do some sci-fi or something to that effect. There are a million games to choose from. So go out there, research them. If it's Star Wars or what's the one for Pathfinder has out there?
Pathfinder.
Starfinder. So I mean, there's a million different ones to choose from, and some of them are a lot lighter, a lot easier just to get through. They're nice for, like for instance, with this one right here. For me, I'm guessing this is probably great for 6, 7, 8 sessions of gaming, and then maybe you go on back to D&D or whatever. I don't know how much storyline there is. I mean, I'm guessing Stranger Things type thing, right? So for me, D&D. What's great about D&D, if we're going to talk about it versus other things, to me, is the world. I mean, as a kid, you're growing up, you have fairy tales about dragons and trolls and orcs and stuff like that. And then, of course, all of us know about Lord of the Rings. So we have all this knowledge on these fantasy worlds, and they just built off of it is what they've done, and it's awesome. Now, if you go to like Star Wars, and that's pretty neat because that world's pretty defined, and you can play that, and there's some good RPG on that also. But D&D just tends to always be the one we always come back to.
Yeah. I feel like I had a question. What was it?
So they're being taught, going back to D&D, there are a ton of rules to go through, but it all starts with and really ends with the characters and their character sheet. So whether you're doing it online through D&D Beyond, whether you're doing it all analog on paper yourself, just read through the handbook, the player's handbook that is, and then also if you're DMing, you can buy a DM guide that'll help you build dungeons, and it has a lot of monsters in there that are just, I don't know, some of the monsters that they have just spark your imagination. Just by hearing a description of them, you're in the world and you're ready to fight them, however you can. And it all kind of starts with the character sheet. It looks intimidating, but to be honest, this is not something that you eat in one bite. Every little bit does something different, and you don't use all of it all the time.
Right.
You only use a little bit of it, a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
So don't get intimidated. If you're new to the table, find a group that is willing to work with you through that. And if you find a DM that's hostile, if you find a group that doesn't create,
find another one.
just find another one.
There's somebody else.
Even if you're in a small town and it's hard to find a group, I get that. But there's the internet. That go on Discord. There's I don't know how many people get on Reddit. I know Reddit is itself maybe a toxic place, but there's a whole subreddit built for people who are looking for games to join. Just don't settle. Find a group that works for you, that's easy to get along with, that you mesh well, because this is a great game when it's going good, and I wouldn't want anyone to miss this. I've made some great friends, I've made some great memories, and so don't let this page with some numbers on it block you from that. It inhibits you from that.
And when you go to create the character, a character is not all the highest stats.
Right.
So a lot of times the new player will tend to create this character that has all super high stats. And that makes it boring, really.
Yeah.
But honestly, the thing is having some weaknesses in there someplace that you have to cover when you're playing the game. That's what makes it fun. It's really not fun if you have everything you need to go through it. I mean, it's like playing an arcade game and just automatically never having to die or whatever.
Right.
So I would definitely make sure when you roll up your character, just roll up and keep the numbers you get.
That's a great point. Yeah. It's not fun being Superman.
Yeah.
It's
You're
really
expendable.
not. Yeah.
These characters should be able to die.
Yeah. And then you make another one.
Yeah.
And then you make another
one.
one.
Goes down, make another one. It's fun.
Because at the end of the day, if you find a group that is good enough, eventually you'll level up to 20.
Yeah.
And once you're that, there's no game left. You have to start over.
Kill him.
Old
age got him.
Old age got him, whatever. And he's a super powerful wizard that lives in his tower, and he, flirts with dragons or something like that. Whatever he does, move on. Move on.
Once he gets weird.
Yeah. Move on.
Move on.
Just find you another one, start a new game, and there's always something new out there to find.
Oh, yeah.
So, just if you're new, don't be afraid when you get there and they say, okay, it's your turn. What do you want to do? It's all about, like we said earlier, the what, why, where, how. It's just, you just ask, why am I there? What do I want to do? So that's it. If you can at all, donate to the cause. We're almost halfway there, and we're going to be here till 10:30, 11 tonight. Still playing board games, but if you ever have anything to say about D&D, we're here to listen to. We're into that stuff. So yeah, anything else?
No, just get out there and visit our channel also on YouTube and see what we have to offer for you.
BoardGameCloset.com.
All right, later.
Bye-bye.